Welcome back to the manor. Julian McBain here, and today we're still hunting up at Lemmy's Castle because it's actually quite fun up here. And if you are in I don't know if it's just an American holiday or if it's a holiday abroad, but for those who would celebrate, I want to wish you all a very happy Father's Day. All right, so I've recently started blogging again at mcbainmanor.com, and what I've done is I'm taking the 42 rules or axioms that Jordan Peterson posted on Quora, and I'm taking them one at a time, one a week. And I'm finding that I'm getting a lot of inspiration and philosophical motivation by doing this. I've always been a writer. I've been a writer for 20 years. Like really off and on, but really focused, well thought out writing, in my opinion. I mean, obviously other people might think my opinions are shit, but that's okay. It's kind of the nature of the beast, right? But like I make an effort to think through the things that I'm writing, and the first two were tell the truth and don't do things that you hate. The first one was one of the rules in his first book, 12 Rules for... well, it was his second book, 12 Rules for Life. And the second one appears in Beyond Order, ironically speaking. Or not ironically speaking, but ironically enough. And so, it kind of hit me that one of them I knew appeared in one of his books when I wrote the blog. Because, of course, I've read 12 Rules for Life. I've internalized it. And I'm not trying to compete with or to overshadow the works of Dr. Peterson or his philosophy, but rather trying to show how these things reflect upon the musings that I have and try to synthesize it into my being. And honestly, I found it as an exercise to be really, really good. Because a lot of us read books, right? We read books, we may internalize some things, we may not internalize some things. And, you know, after we read it, we don't implement. We don't do anything with it. It's just not a thing that we do. But I found that by taking the axioms that are in these books and really kind of reflecting upon my own life with them and how I can utilize them, I'm getting more value from the books. And I really think that might be the core purpose of the books themselves. You know, the thing about self-help books and people who are in that space, you know, motivational, self-help, that sort of thing, it's not that they're just there trying to sell books, although that is I mean, that's how they make their money, right? They sell books. But in order for it to really work, you have to be able to relate to the material in the book that you're reading. And so that's the purpose of the blogs I'm doing over at mcbainmanor.com. And instead of taking just the rules in his books, I decided to do all 42 axioms over the course of 42 weeks to really drill down into the meat of each idea and try to relate them to something in my life. And one of these came up in my life recently because I know a lot of people, and some are within my peer group, some are within my friend group, where they will err on the side of being overly tactful. Like, there's tact. There's a need for tact. You need to be able to say things in a tactful way so that you just don't come off as an asshole or aren't an asshole. Because there are times you can come off as an asshole, and there are times you just are an asshole, even if what you're saying is technically true, right? There's a saying that I've seen is are you being brutally honest for the honesty or to be brutal? I don't like brutal honesty unless it's absolutely required. And there are times when it is absolutely required. But those times are few and very far in between. The idea of being truthful with people, and it's in 12 Rules for Life as always tell the truth or at least don't lie. when being truthful with people, try to cushion the blow of the truth as much as humanly possible. And that doesn't mean you don't tell the truth, or you don't, or that you remove details or facts. But, you know, talk to the person, gauge their reaction, deal with the issue, and then get to the next step. Because if they're too busy dealing with the shock or the anger or the disbelief, they're not going to really listen to what you have to say. And I've taken the time to really work with this idea. I've used it in my professional life. I've used it in my personal life, private life. And it's one of those things where I've tried other methods. Like, there was a time when I reveled in being brutally honest, as much for the brutality as the honesty. I will make that confession. I have not always been a good person, especially when it comes to things like that. I think that is often a product of youth, especially since when you're in your 20s, being edgy is kind of, you know, considered a virtue among 20-somethings for, you know, reasons. It's dumb. But at the same time, having developed and having supervised people, having had to lead from a business context, from a military context, from a from a paying attention to my goddamn HP bar health context, being able to tell someone when they're doing wrong, or when they fucked up, or when a situation is fucked up and there's nothing you can do about it or they can do about it, or that they need to do something about it in order to push through it. Being able to deliver the news in such a way that it causes the least amount of pain as humanly possible. And that doesn't mean you're going to avoid all pain. Sometimes you don't have any choice but to cause pain. Sometimes that pain is cathartic, and sometimes that pain will be catastrophic. And you know what? Sometimes, even though you are doing so for to help them in their best interests, or at least so far as you can tell, they will still hate you for it. And it's unfortunate, but it's something you have to be willing to contend with. It is something you have to be willing to risk, because the failure to do so could cause more harm long term than it actually does short term. And there may come a time when, you know, they get over it and they come back to you and thank you or apologize. Or they might not. But the difference could be the possibility that, and this is why cushioning the blow insofar as it's possible. If you tell someone, I don't know, that their job performance sucks. Let's say that they fuck up every single thing that they try to do, okay? There are really two ways that you can go about this. And if it's that bad, of course, then it's going to be like, okay, obviously there's a training deficiency. Because if they're screwing everything up, they haven't been trained properly. That's on the trainer, not necessarily on the individual, unless it's obvious they're just doing it out of laziness, which does happen. But there are two ways you can resolve that. The first is, hey, I've got some concerns. Let's talk about the issues. You've sat down and talked to customers about X, Y, Z, and each time you do, not only has it not resulted in a customer sale, they've left the store upset. Let's review the process and make sure you're doing it correctly, because I want to make sure I'm setting you up for success. That tells them that they're fucking up without sounding like an asshole. It shows you have genuine concern. The other way, and frankly this is the way that is more often done in a military context because, you know, sometimes you have to, it's the knife hand at them and go, you're fucked up, you need to unfuck yourself. which there are times when that is warranted. But not usually. And oftentimes there are circumstances or things that you can't account for because you don't know what is going on. I apparently forgot to repair my attachments. That wasn't the weapon I was looking for. So how do you learn that difference, right? Because being overly tactful, they'll miss the point. Or the point will be so enshrouded in the attempt to lessen the blow that they don't understand what you're getting at. And I think this is not one of those things that you can just learn by reading books. I think that the adjustment that Peterson made to the axiom of tell the truth or at least don't lie is an important one, because it understands the reality that not everyone is going to be able to tell the truth in a situation for one reason or another. There might be a reason you can't tell them the truth about a situation. Maybe there is private information involved, trade secrets, things that you're not privy to, things that they're not privy to. You know, these are all, you know, they might be saying, you know, am I going to be fired? And you're privy to knowing that they are, in fact, going to get fired. And you're not allowed to disclose that information because it's not your place, or you don't have all the facts, or what have you. And so you can, of course, not lie and say, that's not in my hands. You haven't told them what's going to happen, even though you know. But you also haven't lied to them and said, nah, you're not going to get fired, or I don't think so, or I'm not sure, or quibbling. It's that whether or not you're going to get fired is not in my hands. You haven't implied that they will get fired. You haven't implied that they won't get fired. You just told them that it's out of your control. And as long as that is fundamentally true, then you fulfilled the axiom. Now, another way you could do it, and I use termination in particular because that's one of the more extreme cases that involves a lot of moving parts and a lot of like human resources crap you have to go through. And it keeps it on the professional sphere because I don't like delving into individual personal spheres because I don't want to tell a story that hits too close to home for someone. And have them internalize it and have the facts of the story I tell be different, the background facts of the story I tell be different from the actual facts of their story, and have that cause more problems. So by keeping it in the professional sphere, that's why I'm sticking to like termination from a job, if you're wondering. So let's say you do have control over their termination and they ask, am I going to be fired? If you know for a fact they're being fired, but you're not in a position to disclose it to them yet, that's a tough one. Lying to them isn't the best way to go about it, but obviously you can't just come out and say, yes, you're going to be fired. Now, I don't know the best way to handle that. I've never been in that situation. I am going to postulate that by using something that's a little bit grayer, like, I'm afraid it's on the table. Or final determination needs to be, you know, assuming whoever makes the actual final determination, right? If you're the business owner, obviously you're probably just going to tell them. But if you're part of like a corporation where there's a process, you know, you could say it's in with HR right now, if that's the case, or wherever that ball is currently sitting. And you could consider that a lie by omission, and I know there's a lot of people that would. But if you're in a position where you absolutely cannot tell them the truth, it is best to not lie. And I don't find an error, I don't find an omission to prevent a lie nearly as egregious as a deliberate lie. At least that's my opinion. I don't know, you tell me what you think. Because let me tell you, life is hard. And learning when to be tactful about the truth and when to be completely candid with it is one of the hardest skills for us to learn. And it's taken me a long time to figure out the line, and I do make a lot of mistakes. We all do, and you will. Because sometimes you don't know all the background facts, and you don't know everything about the people that you know or interact with. So you could think that, oh, this person takes bad news really well, and you're like, hey, look, I need to let you know about something, you know, X, Y, and Z. And that could totally send them over the edge, and you did not expect it because it's a personality trait you had no idea they had. Conversely, they could just shrug their shoulders and go, oh, okay. And yes, sometimes it's that drastic of a difference. I have run into both camps. I've run into them in my professional life, in my personal life, in my religious life, in my, well, insofar as it is, politically, everywhere. And unfortunately, there isn't a huge amount of in-between right about now. Like, I've noticed that we have become very extreme in our reactions to things. And I don't know if it's a sign of the times, or if it's the nature of the generations, like the millennials and the Gen Zers that are ascendant. And I say this as a millennial, right? I don't, unlike a lot of people who say millennial as if it's a distasteful thing to say. I am a millennial. I'm an older millennial. I'm born in '84, so I'm old enough to remember the Soviet Union and young enough to know what the hell I'm doing with a smartphone. You know what I'm saying? That was bad. I'm sorry. My grandmother was actually really good with a smartphone. Actually, she was ridiculously good with electronics. My grandmother passed away. She was 79, I think. Maybe she was 78. It doesn't matter. When she passed away, she was like 78, 79. And she played video games like all the time. I'm dead serious about that. Like, owned a PS2. She played a lot of games online. Many of them, you know, like the pretend gambling games. She liked playing, there was an Alice in Wonderland slots game that was on CD-ROM back in the day, back in like 2004. And she played virtual slots all day. Not all day, of course. She worked a job and all that, but I mean, like, you know, several hours. But she played other games too, and for all that she wasn't super computer savvy, she was impressively savvy for someone who, prior to my grandfather passing, actually, didn't have a lot to do with computers. And my grandfather passed in '07. It was in '07. And I know it was in '07 because he passed 2 weeks before my son was born. And then she passed last year, not to COVID. She had cancer, which she 100% said right from the get-go that she had brought it on herself for all the smoking she did when she was younger. So don't smoke, kids. Motherfucker. Julian, pay attention to your health bar. Anyway, I've tangented. I'm sorry. Completely lost my train of thought too. I was talking about telling the truth and lies of omission and why it's so important and examples from a corporate setting because they're safe. And then I tangented because I cracked that joke about smartphones. It's actually really interesting the way technology has moved, right? And I think this is why philosophy has come back to the fore. Life has changed so much in the last 30 years. I think that's why, like, Petersonian philosophy is starting to come back to the forefront, especially among, like, your libertarian types, both classical and social. Because with all of this technology, life has become too easy. And I say this as someone who wants to, like, digitize himself, right? I would love, at the moment of death, for my entire consciousness to be uploaded into a computer, to live in Entropia universe or Virtueverse, I don't care, forever. And I like what technology has given us. I like the fact that I can sit at this computer and talk into a microphone and let you hear the stupid things that come out of my mouth and have you tell me whether or not you like it. But the idea, I think there is an underlying desire. There's a need. There's a want. There's a desperate desire for meaning. Because with all of this technology, with as easy as life has become, with all of the things we have now that we did not have 30 years ago, we've lost the struggles that we had. And I'm not talking that I don't think that we don't need struggles to the point where we become addicted to the struggle. But at the same time, it's those struggles that tell us who we are, because we learn who we are when we run into trouble. That's what really tells us what we're capable of. When we find challenges and we find burdens and we carry those burdens to whatever destination that burden needs to reach. And I think that's really the core. That's really the core of what we've forgotten, and that's why these philosophies have become so damned popular in the modern age. And I think it's only going to spread, and it needs to. It desperately needs to. I think it's because of that people have become cynical, and I've met so many people, friends of friends, people online, that have such a cynical opinion of humanity, and it bothers me. It's like, well, people won't do that. They won't do the things they should. Well, why won't they do the things they should? Because they're lazy. It's like, well, yeah, but no. Historically speaking, if you teach people when they're young to live a certain way, to take responsibility for themselves, to lift themselves up and build the best life they can possibly have, the majority of them, at least to a certain extent, do it. And they might not be successful all the time. They might only be successful 10% of the time, but at least that it's 10% better than they would have otherwise. And I'll admit, I got into a Facebook fight, which is the stupidest thing to do. It's a waste of time. Don't do it. I was dumb. I totally admit to that fault. But I got into this Facebook argument. I got frustrated because I was making logical arguments, counter arguments to what they were saying. And I like having logical debates with people, right? I've got a couple of friends. We can have the logical debates, even on things that would otherwise create a lot of emotional responses. And this one person, I guess, ran out of logical of responses because he said, well, just do it my way anyway. And then someone else chimed in and just had a really cynical viewpoint of human beings. I was deeply disturbed by it. Like, basically that people are too stupid to act in the way that they should, so we should just tell them how to act by doing all of these things. And I was like, that's not a good philosophy. That's horrid. So my hope is that by finding meaning, that type of attitude goes away. I don't know. I've tangented. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. And as always, I appreciate the support, and we'll see you in the next one.